has to be some common sense.
Yes, sir. They have the car stopped in 10th and Ranch by Kohberger.
We still don't know who pulled the trigger. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Police Off the Cuff, Real Crime Stories. I'm your host, retired NYPD Sergeant Bill Cannon, 27-year veteran of the NYPD. And with me tonight, another retired NYPD Sergeant, Professor, law degree, mellow man, Mike Geary. Good, welcome to the show tonight, Mike.
Thank you, Billy. Thank you for having me on.
It's always a pleasure. Anyway, we're supposed to have Lieutenant, Lieutenant Mike, Tom Joyce. Tom, can you hear us?
Yes. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Excellent. Excellent. We were worried that we had some technical difficulties. But anyway, let me introduce you. I mean, it was at the wire that we got you in here. I'm so happy that you made it. And I actually pulled up your LinkedIn photo. Former Lieutenant Commander of the NYPD Cold Case Squad and various other Detective Bureau assignments. Former Vice President of Business Development at Motorola and Vigilant Solutions and Digital Recognition Network, responsible for driving the vision and strategy with international and domestic sales teams on strategic opportunities at VAAS. Tom sought out partnerships, data acquisitions, and other opportunities to expand the vast reach in the U.S. and abroad and work closely with product management on public safety, information sharing, license plate readers, facial recognition, ballistics analysis, and gun violence solutions and marketing on all activities and messaging. Excuse me. Specialties, extensive experience in criminal investigations, including but not limited to homicide, death, robbery, burglary, fraud, and missing persons. Tom Joyce, welcome to the show. Great to have you.
Yeah, Bill, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Love to talk about the technology and how it helps the cops and especially detectives do their job efficiently. And, bad people need to be held accountable, and love being able to put that technology in the hands of cops so that they're safer and they can make the community safer. So it's any opportunity I get, I'll take it. So thank you for the chance.
Tom, let's go over some of these because our audience doesn't know what we're talking about in a lot of these. Let's go to one that is really proven to be a real boon to law enforcement. And one of the first times we saw it, and not in this country, the London bombers. And London had the camera system in the city long before the NYPD did. And the London bombers came up out of the subway or went down into the subway, and their faces were so clear. And they were able to identify them through that camera system integrated into, of course, facial recognition. You want to speak about that a little bit?
Sure. When I was at Vigilant, Vigilant Solutions was an image recognition company, regardless of whether it was recognizing a license plate or a face, and then ultimately a piece of ballistics. But when it came to facial recognition, we started doing facial recognition with our own proprietary algorithm around 2012, 2013, 2014. And that has since changed. There's some technical terms, and I'm not a software engineer. So, but at that time, basically what would happen is if you had a good camera with good image resolution, you'd be able to map out the face, if you will, and measure distances between the eyes, from the corner of the eye to the corner of the nose, the corner of the eye to the corner of the mouth. And all of those vectors, if you will, on a face, and then that becomes a mathematical equation. That mathematical equation is then stored as a number. And the next time they see a face that's either similar or exactly the same face, those algorithms will match up that mathematical equation and present to the end user a list of candidates. So as you talk, Bill, about a bomber exiting the tube, if you will, in England, or a subway system in New York, or wherever an offense might occur, and they capture that face, they then run it against the gallery. The gallery could be dozens or hundreds or millions of images of people, most likely in the form of a booking photo or an arrest photo. And they'll run that algorithm really, really fast, and it'll present candidates in a very, very short period of time. And then since that time in 2012, when I was doing it, it is now advanced to the point where they're now using what everyone knows as, and very overarching, is artificial intelligence, and they're using neural networks. Again, I'm not a technologist per se, but I understand that these algorithms are deeper, informing those facial mathematical equations on those vectors of the face, so that what you're now looking at, Bill, and advancing in the 10 years that I've been watching facial recognition, that the images don't even have to be crystal clear and that good. And you can have faces that are half blocked out. They had tremendous success with facial recognition with the masks during COVID. So the advancements and the accuracy is demonstrably better than it was 10 years ago. And it's only going to get better. And quite frankly, there's always, especially for law enforcement, because the stakes are so high, there's always going to be a human in the loop to make that final determination that they believe that the person in the image is the potential suspect or a witness or anyone who wants to be identified. Did I lose sound? I believe I've lost sound, so I'm going to switch to headphones.
It's become a hot button issue in the US. The controversial practice was recently banned in San Francisco, but few people realize that many police departments have adopted artificial intelligence, using it to analyze video surveillance footage, which can track objects and people.
I've taken the 8,213 objects and I've reduced it to 80 objects.
Other new technologies like sensors, drones equipped with augmented reality capabilities, and real-time crime centers are also making their way into police departments in the US.
All that technology used for the right purposes and the right reasons, I think is good.
So while, no, I don't want to be mugged, I want to be in a community that's safe, I don't think expanding surveillance is the way to do that.
There is just a lot of technology being acquired that's collecting information on everyone, regardless of whether you're involved in a crime or not. And I don't want to end up in a version of America where people are afraid to do things in life because of being watched all the time.
So a very big concern. Tom, I'm just going to throw it to Professor Mike Geary, who's a retired NYPD sergeant. Mike, the civil liberty problems in regards to facial recognition, drones, license plate cameras. I mean, the gamut of all the things that law enforcement is using now. There are civil liberty questions. Mike, you want to comment on that?
Well, there's always those concerns, and a lot of people, and the concerns that I know about, a lot of people that worry about, they worry about this, not only the cameras catching the images, which is a good thing. We can think of like the Boston Marathon bombing and how they got the Tsarnaev brothers, even with poor quality pictures. The public was fabulous in helping them track them down. But what they worry about a lot is A, the number of cameras, B, the fact that they're not sure how long the images are going to be stored. And people do worry about the storage of their images, not just in real time, to track, say, for instance, if you're in the NYPD operations unit and you're looking at a potentially dangerous, a parade or some sort, not parade, like some sort of parade that could turn into maybe a riot. and there may be speakers. So there's First Amendment activity going on. People worry about the recording, but they also worry about the storage. Do you know, Tom, like what the average storage length is? Is it 3 months, 6 months? Is it forever?
Yeah. So license plates have various data retention policies that
Right.
goes specific to the agencies. As it regarding facial recognition and galleries, booking images stay on file. I am unaware of any agency that are only using limited data retention policies as it relates to booking images. There might be other acquisition of images in various forms. It's very rare that they would ever use. I'm not going to say never, but it's very unlikely that they're using facial recognition in the wild, pulling in that image from an outside source and then running it up against a gallery for a criminal investigation. With the data retention with their galleries are booking images. Now, there are other vendors out there that use social open source intelligence and are doing web scraping. But those data retention policies, that's a private commercial entity. Okay, so the department would have their own data retention policies. This provider is providing a facial recognition solution plus open source intelligence, their own gallery, so they're not restricted by any data retention. Now, the public's perception and what they want is a different story as well.
Right,
But
sure.
legally, through open source intelligence, they can store it as long as they want.
Okay.
You know, Tom, you're using all kinds of new terms that many people that no, but I mean, we understand you.
Sure.
But many people don't speak the language of computers. If they, you know, we were born the generation, well, at least I was, but the generation before really
Me too.
computers became a big vogue. And now a lot of this stuff is very scary. AI is very scary. Artificial intelligence is very scary. Drones up in the sky tracking people is very scary. License plate readers are very scary. To me, I get pissed off when I get a red light summons that was issued by a camera because I feel that the heart of it isn't the safety of the public, it's the coffers of the municipality. And that's also true with speed cameras. Like, what are you trying to do? You're milking the shit out of people. You know what I mean? And it's like, and those are also interspersed with databases and with license plate readers and all this other stuff. You know that if they're running it for this, they're using it for something else. And that's, I can commiserate with the public and say, yeah, you know something? I don't really like that either. I'm a little concerned with that also. Where does it end?
Yeah, so that's really going. So I do know that for law enforcement, patrol officers tactically using LPRs for that immediate hit against the National Crime Information hot list of plates. And again, for your viewers, I'll explain a little bit. That's approximately 300 to 350,000 vehicles twice a day are uploaded into the NCIC hot list. So those could be stolen cars, stolen license plates, wanted for some kind of felony or misdemeanor crime. None of the police departments have direct access to red light and speed camera LPR systems. If they want to harvest that data, they have to go through, either subpoenas or warrants and articulate a need for it. The only databases that public safety is using specifically for their everyday operational and investigative uses are the data that they either collect, or in the one case of Vigilant Motorola, that they have a commercial database of license plate readers as well.
Tom, I said to you before you came on, we were going to try to relate this to the Idaho murders, Kohberger, and also to the Alec Murdaugh case. With the Kohberger case, the big lead early on in that investigation was, of course, the white Hyundai Elantra. Now, because of technology, that is how they came up with that lead. Cameras, again, on the list I have, doorbell cameras. How important did they become? Gas station, civilians that have cameras, throwing it out. You know how we were always, you went to Comstead, I went to Comstead, we got beaten down. How they stressed, did you check this? Did you check that? Did you check this video? Did you check that video? Did you check the red light cameras? Did you check the transit When someone swiped the card, there was a whole system they could track that. We were still in the caves when we were on the job. We were still hitting two rocks together to make a spark. Now the technology has really exploded. And one of the things that I find excellent because it saves lives is the cops having a phone that allows them to talk to the 911 operator, allows them to see the photo of the perpetrator, allows them to know the history of the location. That is amazing. And that is so great to keep cops safe.
Yeah, I think everything you said, Bill, it makes perfect sense, and it's really good. I'm gonna let your audience know that, in my opinion, doing the investigations, and I think both of you gentlemen will agree, all the technology, it accelerates things. It brings you to the right door faster, the right car faster, the sharing of information and the interoperability that you were just mentioning. Things happen at a lot more rapid pace. But at the end of the day, no matter how much technology you have, I think the true art that's never going to go away and is always going to be important is the ability for someone doing an interview and/or an interrogation to extract information from somebody to put the pieces of the puzzle together, because you can only go so far. And even today with DNA is no longer a slam dunk case. You still have to tell a story, and you still have to establish motive, and you still have to put other pieces of the puzzle together. So these are all fantastic technologies that I can't wait to dive into. But at the end of the day, it's about the people and the talking and the interviewing and extracting information that someone's reluctant to share.
Tom, I always would say, whether I was teaching at the CIC course or teaching at the college that I taught at, was that investigators ask questions. And what happens when they ask questions? They get answers. And what happens when they get answers? They get more questions. And they keep digging and digging. You hit it right on the head. And that is the nuts and bolts. Put on your gumshoes and get out there and step down. They don't do it. They do it by phone mostly. But get out there and shake the tree. That's an old NYPD expression. Shake that tree. Pick up a rock. Lift up the rock. See what's underneath that rock. Mike, I feel you're not getting your input in here, and I just want you to say a few words about what we're talking about.
No, I think the technology is fabulous, and used properly, it's great circumstantial evidence of guilt in any criminal case. It builds upon the hard work done by detectives and by even first responders to the location, the first units on the scene, patrolmen and sergeants. And so it's great to be able to hand off to the detectives some basic information where they can then use technology to enhance it. And we've talked about this before. So people may be, and sometimes I do, am a little bit uncomfortable with things like facial recognition software, for just to view crowds in a subway or on the street. I myself feel a little bit uncomfortable about that. However, if it does lead to catching a criminal like the Sarnaya brothers, in Boston, I'm all for it. And we do understand that. And I think a lot of people like me who are wary of the technology and the storage of those images, I think it's counterbalanced by the fact that this information can also be used to exculpate someone.
100%. That's a good point.
Therefore, so long as it's reliable, it can implicate or it can exculpate an innocent person. So that's fantastic.
Let me play a little bit of this. This is going to talk about drone technology.
To make arrests and save lives. CBS 46's Jamie Kennedy is going behind the scenes of the training.
This drone is less than $500, and this is something you can go pick up at a big box store.
The progress in drone technology has taken them off the toy shelf and onto the crime scene.
Now, this is where you can use the camera look down feature. Having the ability to have a drone go into places where you don't put an officer at risk, that to me is job one, because from my previous law enforcement days, job one was to go home every single night.
There's a tool for every job.
A leader in law enforcement drone training is Skyfire Consulting, run out of Atlanta.
It's definitely a very specific skill set, and having both the knowledge on how to fly the drone as well as the tactical knowledge.
Knowledge recently applied by APD in taking down an accused murderer. I had to find out exactly how it feels being approached by something out of the Terminator.
We're going to hide out here and wait for the cops. The sound is even unnerving. Oh, those lights are intense.
Show me your hands. Show me your hands. Stand in place and turn completely around. Walk toward the drone.
It's meant to be disorienting. So that's with the bright lights and the loud noise. We don't want it to be quiet. We want it to be disorienting for you.
I tell you what, it's not the best feeling at all.
I can't express to you how much of a tool that is for our law enforcement partners.
Around 2,000 first responder departments out of 40,000 nationwide utilize drones, but more departments are coming on daily, so expect to see a lot more suspects coming face to face with drones.
Now, as far as weaponizing drones, well, that's just not going to happen. The FAA specifically outlaws that even for our own law enforcement, but the military, they are allowed to weaponize them, but that's only when they're using them in warlike situations.
Fascinating, right? I mean, when you think, I'll tell a quick story because it's funny. We had when I was in homicide, we had a play 115th Street, one of the projects. They were having all kinds of problems with shootings there. And so they put a camera up one of the buildings, and that night the perp stole the camera. So it's like, I thought it was like funny. It's like, what did you think was going to happen? These guys are shooting each other. They're shooting people. They're pitching drugs, pitching crack. And you're going to put a camera there and think they're going to be, oh, look, there's a camera. Let's just leave it there. It's going to catch, I mean, so there's something, a moving drone, at least they can't steal that. I don't think they're going to shoot it down either, Yeah.
Well, we've got, there's been some installations now where they're doing a lot of covert cameras, both license plate and CCTVs. So they put them inside. It looks like cable boxes, electrical transformers and such like that, traffic cones, all sorts of different configurations. Pretty ingenious.
Yeah, no, those, especially the mobile license plate readers. I mean, it can read thousands of plates in seconds, right? Is that correct?
Yeah, depending on the camera setup, you could read multiple lanes of cameras, vehicles going up to 120, 130 miles an hour, and they can record thousands per hour without very, in good conditions, probably in a high 90 percentile accuracy rate. If you have obscured plates, or if weather's inclement, snow buildup on the back of bumpers, such like that, that affects it. But in ideal conditions, it's remarkable technology.
Tom, I think John Q, honest citizen, would have some concerns, like, they lifted, their plate is red on a license plate reader, and they owe 2 summonses in that night, or someone comes to the house and tows their car or whatever. That's what I think an honest citizen would worry about. And the possibilities do exist. Like, look, city marshals, they get a cut of everything they pick up. I've seen them out there with their little plate readers in the handheld ones, and they're pulling cars right off the street. So again, John Q citizen would be worried that, oh, my plate came up by a plate reader. Next thing I know, my car's towed out of my driveway.
Yep.
Can that happen, or will that happen?
Well, again, we have 18,000 law enforcement agencies in this country, so I'm not going to say no one is doing that. It's very rare that police are hot listing license plates of 2 or 3 traffic infractions or 2 or 3 parking summonses. If they're being done by a sheriff's office or a civilian law enforcement, a civil law enforcement arm for those types of crimes, that would be a completely separate hot list utilized by that agency specifically and only. I can tell you the vast majority of state and local law enforcement officers and agencies in this country are working strictly off of the NCIC hot list or an appended state hot list. Like in New York, we had NYPD. They would add, in Florida, it's the FCIC. In California, it's the Cal DOJ list, where they take the NCIC list, they add additional data sets of license plates that they want to find for whatever the reason. In Florida, as an example, it's uninsured motorists. All right, that wouldn't make the NCIC list, but Florida wants to find out all uninsured motorist cars. And then any specific custom hot list that agency would want to put out. So like being in homicide, Bill, you might turn around and say, okay, these are the 5 witnesses and the 5 suspects that I'm looking for. Can I add these 10 license plates to our custom hot list in the NYPD, as an example?
Great, fantastic tool. But again, playing devil's advocate, if it's misused, it can be scary to the honest citizen out there that doesn't want to get caught up in the license plate dragnet. You know, another thing is when doing these shows, we come across police departments that are fantastic, some that are horrific. And, you know, that has to do with their budget and the money they get. And I can tell you when I jokingly said, you know, the NYPD, certain years we were hitting 2 rocks together to get a flame. And I remember in the 2-3 squad, and no one will believe this, but it's absolutely true. We had no cars once. We actually went down to no cars. And an inspector came in, took over the Detective Borough of Manhattan, and he started getting us cars. But like, how does that happen? The budget, there was no money. So after 9/11, a lot of police departments were modernized, including the NYPD, because we got all that federal money. When they said, oh, each detective's getting his own computer, I was like, what? Are you kidding me? And you're all going to get your own phone. I go, they're bull. I couldn't believe it. I just didn't believe it because, you know, as you know, we were using typewriters with ribbons and carbon papers. And we were like, you know, thus I say, you know, they're hitting 2 rocks together to make a spark. And we were doing that.
That's true. That's true. We had detectives who got to crime scenes by taking a city bus or having the patrol car run them out to a crime scene. You're 100% correct on cars. In 1999 and 2000, we had cars, you know, we wouldn't even want to bring them to the shop because they know they would abandon the cars. You know, they would condemn the car.
That's right. That's right.
We would just look for the local mechanic to fix it for us and keep it running. You know, that's the way it was. But,
and then Tom, when you had a high profile arrest and there was a perp walk and they were walking him to the car, the chiefs were embarrassed for the cars that we had to put the perps in. We were like, how about the perps? How about us? We got to drive these cars. And they would be like, that's so embarrassing. Well, that's what we're using. So get us cars. You know, it was actually horrific.
One of my favorite stories is when I was a squad commander in the 7-9, we were the first precinct in Brooklyn North out of the 10 precincts, the detective squad, to get a color laser printer so that we could print wanted photos in color as opposed to the black and whites. And then the faxes, remember those where the people used to take the white out and put faces on them because they were all blacked out, right? Well, in the job's infinite wisdom, they provided us a color laser toner and they never ever gave us toner ever again. So could never use it.
Well, I just before that whole thing that I'm talking about, and then I'll stop beating up the NYPD because it was still the greatest police department in the world. But during that whole thing, we were using our own phones. And if we had to send a photo or receive a photo, we were using our own personal emails because there was no such thing as has been an email. So the NYPD was, I would say, about 10 to 20 years behind the times. Other departments were doing things that we were like, what? You guys have email? You guys have the ability to send photos? You have color? We were like shocked, you know? Yeah. And meanwhile, we were the #1 police department, biggest police department. We felt the best police department in the world, but we're really hampered by the technology that the department had. And I hope now that they're at least up to 1990. Yeah. I'm sure they're up to 20.
I happen to know who leads all information technology right now, and he's a hardworking, dedicated chief, and nobody better to do the job. So if anyone's going to get stuff done, it's going to be the gentleman in charge right now. So,
you know, when we also talk about, there's a lot of resistance, and this was the NYPD now trying to use robots. Let's play a little bit of this.
K5, but he won't be alone. DigiDog has been re-enlisted.
DigiDog is out of the pound.
A cute name for a surveillance machine. When DigiDog was first seen in the city in 2020, there was a public backlash, some seeing it as dehumanizing and militaristic. Critics of the program already voicing their concerns.
I just don't think at a time when we're cutting money for the public libraries, when we're cutting money for vital services, that we need to be spending close to $1 million on this sort of unproven.
This is what exactly you're dealing with. An idiot like this in New York City that is comparing the library budget to the police budget. These are the morons that vote for who the people that wind up in office in our city. Guys like this, he's worried about the library, dude. You go buy books. You got to be kidding me. It's really, it really upsets me. It really just, I got triggered. You know how they say they triggered your child in the academy? I just had my child triggered by this guy.
Attack.
The NYPD says DigiDog will only be used in highly dangerous situations like terrorism, bomb threats, and hostage standoffs, and can only be deployed at the direction of the chief of police.
When we send our officers in there, the danger that's created for the officers and the suspect, we can't measure that. But with a DigiDog, it's going to de-escalate. It's going to give us additional time to work, and then we can make a better plan. We can do a better assessment and get the right resources to help the person.
Similar technologies have been used before in other cities. In San Francisco, a vote allowing police to use remote-operated robots armed with lethal explosives was killed.
No killer robot! No killer robot!
Unlike the versions attempted in other cities, DigiDog will be unarmed. Like all law enforcement, DigiDog will always have a partner, remotely controlled by trained response unit officers. And then there is K5, a 5-foot, 400-pound autonomous security robot that will soon be patrolling Times Square and the subway.
The K5 uses artificial intelligence to provide real-time incident notifications to first responders.
And another high-tech tool introduced, the Star Chase system, a device that police officers can use to shoot GPS-enabled trackers onto fleeing vehicles, allowing them to back off on high-speed chases and still track their suspect every step of the way.
I love it. I'm a little bit surprised at the NYPD. I know that they tried to go to DigiDog under de Blasio, and then I think AOC objected to it. So de Blasio's his manhood shriveled up and he backed off. And I'm glad to see that Adams is standing up to all of these politicians that object to it, so that you can protect the lives of cops first and not worried about the public's perspective on it first, and the cops' well-being second. You guys have no comments?
Well, I'd like to see a real German Shepherd standing right next to me that could sink its teeth into some sort of moron who wants to attack someone or attack me. I could just imagine what's going to happen if DigiDog is by himself or herself patrolling, and the controller is at a remote location. Somebody's going to pick up DigiDog from behind, stick it in the trunk of a car, and drive away with it. I mean, that's what I would do if I was a perp. So I'm not so sure about how long he's going to last on the street.
They will absolutely steal DigiDog.
Oh
There's no doubt in my mind. It'll be then the next day it'll be a Digi drug dealer. It'll be a courier. It'll be Digi drugs. They'll call him.
Little bags of crack in his jaw, delivering it like a Saint Bernard delivering rum.
I also have to believe, Tom, that this is probably paid for by some federal money, because I can't believe the city would pay their money for this.
Yeah, the NYPD is probably one of the most sophisticated in terms of getting funding through various grants. And I mean, dozens and dozens of grants between the Homeland Security, Stone Garden, Eddie Burns, JAG. I mean, they're flush with good federal monies and plus their own capital. But you saw they got defunded and they took $1 billion away from them and then got it back, but parts of it. So, but as someone once told me in the NYPD, who's now running the NYPD IT, there's always money for a good plan. So sometimes it's not readily available, but if there is a good plan, there is a good strategy, they have a good sense of how they want to deploy it, they can back it up with good training, good policy, they'll figure it out. So if you got a good story to tell, they can get it.
Absolutely. Folks, this is Police Off the Cuff, real crime stories. If you like real crime stories from a police perspective, then you're in the right place. And if you're not subscribed to us, go on our YouTube, hit that subscribe button, give us a thumbs up, and ring that bell. Make comments. We love to read your comments, and we also like to comment to them too. If you want to support us financially, we have a Patreon with 3 different levels. We have a YouTube channel memberships with 5 different levels. You see the folks in the green font. They're part of our YouTube channel memberships, and we really appreciate all of our fans, our friends, our subs. They really support us. Schmitty, thank you for the $5 super sticker. This is day one of National Police Week. Robots or not, I respect and honor your human service, and to all that have fallen, you are remembered. Schmitty, thank you very much for those kind words. This technology will allow police to be safer. It'll be allow police to do their job more efficiently. I was part of the investigative units that went. You remember there was a famous case of Alberta Spruill, who was a grandmother living in an apartment, and a unit on the NYPD hit the wrong apartment, and they threw a flashbang in there, and it was the wrong apartment. She died of a heart attack. Mistakes like that, perhaps with DigiDog or a robot, it would alleviate the reason to throw in a flashbang. That a flashbang in an apartment with drug dealers and armed or dogs, it'll startle them and it'll give the police the advantage. But if they have a robot like this, they won't need to do that. So mistakes like that could still happen, but they won't be quite as tragic. Tom, your thoughts?
Yeah, well, having been involved in a narcotics and hitting the wrong door, I certainly understand that. And then I think you're spot on, Bill. Like, these things will absolutely have an advantage and will save lives, whether it be civilian lives or police lives. And ultimately, that's what we're looking for. So I couldn't agree more.
100%. And, after I play this next video, and it's going to be on the ShotSpotter technology, I just want to address to you and to Professor Mike Geary, why is there such pushback from politicians about this technology? And not just politicians. Many people claim that it's prejudiced against certain groups of people, for example. And my answer to that is yes, it's artificial intelligence, ShotSpotter, facial recognition, video cameras. They're catching the people that are doing the crime. That's who it's prejudiced against, people that are committing crimes. So to just, the old expression, throw out the baby with the bathwater, that's what they're trying to do. Instead of realizing this will make civilians safer, it'll make police safer. Let me play this this is about the ShotSpotter technology.
Councilman Mark Anthony Middleton tells me the sound of gunshots makes families in Durham hide for their safety.
Young people should not be having that conversation about getting in their bathtub if gunfire breaks out. And if they are having it, for me as a government official, as an elected official, that's a cue that we need to be putting all of our brain power, all of our intellect, all of our creativity into addressing this issue.
Police are considering ShotSpotter. It's a series of microphones designed to detect the sound of a gunshot and pinpoint its location within 25 meters. Police are then alerted of the location almost instantly. Middleton just wants something done to reduce gun violence.
I'm not pushing this as the solution or even a solution. What I am pushing, however, is a conversation.
Conversations are happening. I've learned ShotSpotter has helped reduce gun violence by 40% in one Chicago neighborhood.
Enables the police to detect or to effect a fast and precise response to over 90% of gunfire incidents within the coverage area, and that has a strong deterrent impact and disrupts the gun violence.
Phil Daly works for ShotSpotter. While the results are there, people still have concerns like whether the device could pick up on nearby innocent conversations.
When it comes to the ShotSpotter system, it's really important to understand that human voices do not trigger the sensors. Our system's designed to only trigger an alert when we detect a very loud, impulsive sound, one loud enough that it needs to trigger at least 3 sensors, some of which could be hundreds of yards away.
This is why Middleton is pushing for more discussion. He's hoping it will lead to something that helps Durham reduce gun violence.
Durham is not sequestered from the rest of the country. We have a gun culture in America. So it's not just about what's going on now. It's about having things in place because of our growth.
Middleton tells me he plans to talk about this tonight at Durham's City Council meeting. I will be at that meeting and have any updates on this topic.
So, Tom, first, I'd like you to comment about the technology ShotSpotter. And part B to that is why, with all of these new technologies, is there this pushback by, it seems like, certain groups that are against it?
Yeah. So I'll answer the second part. I'll give you a preview. They're against all of this technology, whether it be LPR, facial recognition, ShotSpotter, any algorithmic police technology, predictive police. And it's the same argument over and over and over again, and we'll get to that. So let's talk about gunshot acoustic detection systems, whether it be ShotSpotter, who is the leader in the space. They have hundreds of deployments throughout the country. They're doing a fantastic job. There's a couple of other emerging vendors who are doing mostly inside. They can do it much easier. It's a much harder technology to deploy and be successful out in the wild, if you will, out in the street. The technology is fantastic. When you think about the sensors that are set, they put them into areas that are known for an abundance of shots fired jobs, especially communities, sadly, that are so used to hearing shots fired that they don't even call the police anymore. So that's where it really works. Philadelphia is one city that I know the former ATF SAC of Philadelphia. He said there were so many shots fired in some neighborhoods in Philadelphia. I said, people really don't call the police there? He's like, absolutely not, you know? So the technology works in that way. It gives you the date, time, location, the GPS coordinates, it triangulates, and then goes to a center, if you will, where that union listens to the repeat and verifies that it is a confirmed shots fired. It'll give you the number of unique firearms and possibly even caliber, depending on its sound. And again, they're moving into the artificial intelligence space, so I only expect that technology to advance as well. And then once they confirm that it is a firearm, not fireworks or a car backfiring back in the day or some sort of explosion, it then sends a ticket to your CAD, your computer-aided dispatch, which then dispatches those police officers to the scene. And their response times are fantastic. They're really accelerating the shots fired from the neighborhoods that were insulated, and maybe they're reluctant to call, and they eventually do. These are guaranteeing that the cops are going to show up at the scene. So really great technology.
Excellent explanation. And Mike, someone from the chat has a really good comment, and I want you to address this comment, Mike. Yeah, if you could. Oh, excuse me. Hang on. I put the wrong one. There you go. This one. I'd like you to read it and address it.
Okay. Papa Rogers states, that's why they call this technology prejudicial. It sends police to where shots are fired, which, unfortunately, although accurate, is often in racially minority communities. It's the politicians who don't like this technology. They're worried about the optics. They're worried about getting reelected. So they try to stir up enough voters in the next election to try to have people agree with their viewpoint. These are people like that have a single purpose in life, and that is to try to change the criminal justice system, to try to close down efforts of the police in poor areas. And unfortunately, in the poorest economic areas, in some cities, it's mostly Black and Hispanic. In other places out west, perhaps, it might be Caucasian. But the problem with this is that the optics is something that they can't stomach. They don't realize that in New York City, probably for the past decade, about 85 to 90% of all the people who are homicide victims in New York City in any year are usually Black and Hispanic males. And so if you actually use this technology in Black and Hispanic neighborhoods and poorer neighborhoods, you're going to be able to catch a person much quicker. You're going to save lives, and you're going to overwhelmingly save Black and Hispanic lives. And that's one of the things politicians don't want to address, or spokespeople who do not want to see this technology put out there. They don't express those facts. It's sad that it's ideology over common sense.
You know, Mike, very well said. And I just want to say one thing, and I don't say it maybe as articulately as you do, but isn't it the job of the police to arrest the people who are committing the crimes, regardless of racial makeup? Isn't it their job to do that? Do they then get to the scene and say, oh, this guy's a Black guy, I'm not going to lock him up because make me look like I'm prejudiced? That's ridiculous. But that's what some of these politicians are pushing by not backing these things that will be saving Black and brown lives in the inner city. That's right. What the results of this will be saving lives, but yet they're afraid, like you said, they're afraid of the way it looks. Tom, your thoughts?
Yeah, so I'm going to share an interesting story. It's a series of stories, but I'll combine it into one. So when I went to Vigilant Solutions, the LPR technology was probably 10 to 15 years old already, but it was really accelerating at that point. And my company paid a significant amount of money to lobbyists because there was very detrimental laws being written throughout the country in various states to straight outlaw LPR, even for public safety, law enforcement uses. And it was my job to go with the lobbyist to demonstrate the technology and to have conversations. And I will tell you, honestly, when we finally did get in front of the correct politicians, regardless of which political affiliation, whichever side of the aisle they were on, they at least listened and then made a decision to what they felt was necessary. And I would say more often than not, we flipped them to the point where they said, okay, we won't outlaw it. They didn't fall in love with the technology, but at least they would let you write legislation that was at least favorable to public safety and law enforcement so they can continue doing their jobs. And they might have outlawed it for any other, repo agents or anyone else collecting data. But at least we were able to convince them to leave favorable language in the legislation for public safety and law enforcement uses. So I will say I had a pretty good experience, although having to even explain it and go through that and jump through hoops the way we did was a very costly effort and a very time-consuming effort.
Well, it's like when they take a lot of the tools away from the police. For example, one of the biggest tools they took away, and non-police don't fully understand this, was the search incidental to lawful arrest for turnstile jumpers. Now it's practically legal to jump the turnstile in New York City subways, and that's why the subways are a mess. And you know what their solution is? Because they're losing millions and millions of dollars. Their solution is congestion pricing. Let the idiots that are middle-class people taking their car, how dare them take the car into the city? Let's hit them for $9 to $23, and we'll cover all the turnstile jumpers. So that's the subway. With that kind of mentality, the subway is going to be a mess for years to come.
Yeah, I mean, I was originally a transit cop, and I worked for Jack Maple, the father of CompStat, and stop him at the gate, because we know the vast majority of turnstile jumpers have a warrant and or a weapon, and they're beating the system. To no one who commits a robbery or a grand larceny in the subway ever paid their fare. Like
100%.
It eats into their ROI. If they're going to do a robbery and they're going to gain $20 on a robbery and they have to pay $2 to get in, they're only going to make $18 instead of $2. So they gotta increase their investment. So and we used LPR in a fixed deployment as the equivalent of stopping them at the gate. So they put virtual fences and fixed LPR cameras in cities, and then all entrances and exits were all fitted with LPR, and they did the hot list, and they got them essentially at the virtual gate coming into a city. Laverne, California, you could not get in or out of Laverne, California unless you were read by an LPR, and they got so many burglars and so many wanted felons and so many stolen cars coming from other jurisdictions to come in and do crimes within Laverne.
That's incredible. And, you talk about those big crimes, and many people don't realize that the Tsarnaev brothers were heading to Times Square. And if not for that small little Watertown Police Department in Massachusetts, that was some of the most heroic police I've ever seen in my life, banged it out with two brothers that not only had guns, but bombs. They were throwing bombs at them during this gunfight. And, I had John McKinley, who was one of the sergeants in that. He was on our show, and I was like tears in my eyes, him talking about what they did. It was amazing. It was just amazing. And that is policing in the United States. A little tiny police department like Watertown bangs it out with two terrorists and unconcerned for their own safety because they're doing a job. And does the people really appreciate them? Did government really appreciate them? You know, there's a lot of inside stories if you watch that on Netflix, the documentary on the Boston Marathon bombings. The FBI wanted not to tell that they were ID'd, and the Boston PC was like, "No, we got to get this out there," and he was overruled by some bureaucrat. Because that's the way that we do it on the NYPD, and that's the way the police did it in Boston. No, you got them ID'd. Let everyone know who they are. What is that's the the FBI, and I hate to criticize them, but they have this secretive culture. Oh, let's keep it secret so only we know. No, let 10 million eyes know instead of 500 agents. And you really, I implore everyone to watch that documentary. Because a lot of the things we're talking about now with technology is why they were caught, but also the fact that a small little police department banged it out with these terrorists and saved hundreds of lives.
Yep. No, I agree. The documentary was fantastic, and and if I was, I'm very familiar with everything that happened there. I know some of the people involved as well, and your guests that you've had, and a lot of information. And Bill, I'll be honest with you, Mike. I would probably say if I was them at that time, I would say, do you know where the suspect is? Yes or no? Yes, you think you do? You got about an hour to get him. If not, that information's getting out because it's the advantage of
Tom, 100%. And that's the way we do it in the NYPD. We don't wait. We know where the guy is. Let's go get him. Because you're going to let a criminal decide who he's going to kill next? No, let's let the good guys grab the criminal while he's in bed or while he's at a disadvantage, not when he's at an advantage. 100%, Tom, that is the mentality of the NYPD. That obviously was the mentality of the Watertown police, the Boston police. Police, they do the job day to day. The FBI is more of in a holding pattern. They're in their office. I don't think they're not out on patrol. So I don't think they appreciate what it means to be out there and doing the job. Mike?
Yeah, Billy, they how we used to feel about the FBI. The one-way street kind of relationship with them was never a two-way street. They are law enforcement. They've got great technology and they've got some great skilled people, but they're not patrolmen. They're not police officers in uniform who are dealing with the public 24/7. They have a very different mentality about it. I saw the special on Netflix, and I actually just recently saw the movie on TV. It was great, and it just pointed out the difference. It's a totally different mindset. One side of law enforcement, which is the technological agent side, and then there's the face-to-face, everyday interaction with the public, up close and personal, dealing with problems, solving problems as fast as you can. Very different mindset. Very, very different mindset from the FBI. And that was really brought out in the Boston bombing case. And it worked wonderfully because once they put those pictures out, within about 12 hours, they were getting phone calls and everything. And that helped save the day.
No, I want to actually correct myself before. The sergeant his name was John McClellan. And he was the hero in that documentary that had his car moving as he walked alongside it. And he used his car as a shield, which was brilliant. Watertown police, nothing happens there, but this guy knew to do that. And he was trained well that he did that. And that's, that is law enforcement across this country. These little police departments, go ahead, challenge them. See what's going to happen, terrorists. The one brother wound up dead on the scene. Well, actually he lived, shot 8 times and run over by his brother in a car, and he was still alive going to the hospital. I think that guy was certainly on a mission, Anyway, all of these things that we're talking about, all this technology, and Tom, I'm so thrilled that you came on this show. I mean, you're one of definitely the experts on these technologies, and it's a shame that all of these technologies have become so political. It would seem like a no-brainer. Look, we learned a lot about even brass catcher. And one of the things we learned about brass catcher, which is the technology to identify the brass fired from a semi-automatic gun, was that criminals rent their guns or lend them out. So a gun from Brooklyn may be used in the Bronx to do a murder. They borrowed it from the perp in Brooklyn. And without the technology brass catcher, we would have never known that, and it affects the way we investigate things.
Yeah, absolutely. And then it's funny, the NYPD program, which works with the ATF in conjunction with the local police departments, there's about 250 NYPD deployments, and that probably contributes a couple of thousand law enforcement agencies contribute to it. They're broken down into various sectors. There's about 13 of them. I believe they're working on nationalizing it. But if you thought that you had a piece of ballistic evidence in, like, say, the Northeast region, and you thought it came from California, you'd make a special request. They can run those comparisons. So many incredible cases were brought down because they were able to link the same firearm and then do the tracing and then track the ownership and such like that. Ballistics is not as prominent in public safety as you might think. There's still a lot of agencies that have no access to submitting ballistic evidence for comparison.
Yeah, I mean, as we look across the country, even, we question some of the things like the coroner system, which is just nuts. And, some of these systems where, you have one detective that is doing everything. He's investigating a case, he's processing the evidence, he's doing the crime scene, he's taking the photos. I mean, usually it's small departments that can't afford to have all of that, but it's not efficient. And if you have a major crime, look, Moscow, Idaho, the 4 kids from, Ethan Chapin, Zaina Knodel, Madison Mogan, and Kaylee Gonsalves, that police department was not really equipped to investigate a crime like that. But to their credit, right away, they got help from the Idaho State Police and the FBI. And even with all of that help, the press was questioning, why did it take 6 weeks? They were asking, is this a cold case? Like, they're pouring gasoline on a bad situation already. I guess that's the press's job in this country, to be shit stirrers. That's what we'd call them on the NYPD, right? And 6 weeks is not a long time. As you know, being in the 7-9, 6 weeks to solve a murder is not a long time. I know everyone watches the first 48. They think it's going to happen in the first 48 hours, but that's not reality, And, that easy button that you see on TV, it doesn't exist. I want to. Go ahead. I'm sorry. I was going. Go ahead, Tom. Go ahead.
No, you're 100% correct on the 6 weeks. I didn't follow it as closely because I don't listen to the news, because I know they're not telling the right story. So I just waited for it to play itself out, And I thought, wow, when they had made the arrest, kudos to them, to the task force that was together with the 3 agencies. That was an accelerated period of time, but anyone who knows how complicated, especially a case that you need to cross your T's, dot your I's, it's going to be under the scrutiny. You really want to do everything right. You really want to pull it all together. It wound up going interstate into Washington, then back across the country to Pennsylvania. I thought they did a remarkable job considering all the challenges that we're up against.
Well, Tom, 100%. And, again, the small little police department, Moscow Police Department, their chief was a humble guy. He got help, and that's why this case, they made an arrest on it. There's a big thing here, policing with artificial intelligence.
To understand how police departments use these new technologies, which makes law enforcement much more powerful, we traveled to New Orleans. For the past year and a half, the city's Office of Homeland Security has been operating a real-time crime center. The city's installed over 400 cameras in hotspots, from the French Quarter to outer-lying districts. It also pulls in camera feeds from over 150 businesses and private homeowners. The system screens all incoming calls for service, including 911 calls, which automatically activate the network of cameras.
All of these cameras would spin up automatically in the software when any incident is created within a 1/10 of a mile of these 3 blocks.
So your eyes can be there before an officer's eyes.
Sure. All of our cameras are pan-tilt zoom cameras, 30 times optical zoom.
And you can very easily rewind back and also see it happening.
Sure. If it's obviously associated with a criminal matter, we'd go through historical footage and provide that information to the officers.
Some police officers in New Orleans have quickly embraced this access to recorded surveillance cameras.
The street's pretty well covered by cameras?
Yes, cameras on every intersection.
Paul Johnson's been with the New Orleans police force for 6 years. He's a night shift detective in the French Quarter.
That camera right there, it's hiding in plain sight right there.
Correct, yes. This particular camera actually has assisted me on one of my latest cases, probably like a couple months ago. We had a shooting at this very intersection at 4:30 in the morning. The gentleman that got shot claimed to be the victim. We watched the video surveillance, went back, and it showed that actually he was actually shooting at the young man first. So it kind of, helped us exonerate the guy we were looking for.
And if you didn't have the camera, do you think you would have known the truth?
No.
Amazing, right? So go backwards and you hear like this guy would be, oh, I'm the victim. And, you watch the footage and it turns out he was in a gunfight. I don't think it's, the 1860s where you can get into gunfights on the streets of New Orleans, and now there's ways they go back. This is a huge investigative resource to be able to use these cameras and also to find out what happened. And Tom, as a squad commander, lots of times video came into play and it enabled you to put the story together. And maybe it wasn't good enough to identify anyone then, but you could tell now this is what happened. And it's a tremendous investigative resource.
Yeah, I mean, how many times did you go into a bodega and ask them for their video cameras and they said, oh, it's not working today, it didn't record today. However, we did get some video footage from time to time, and I know how much is out there now, and it's just getting more and more. And the digital evidence management system of police departments now are becoming very, very sophisticated. They got all these feeds, hundreds of different public-private partnerships. Anyway, but sometimes it's just putting somebody, even though the event isn't captured on video, maybe just that person walking through the scene, or in the case of Idaho, the University of Idaho, that car was seen multiple times before and after, but it really wasn't directly related to the crime. It's just known it was in close proximity to the house where they were multiple times in a couple of days in advance. And then it even showed up about 7 or 8 hours after the crime scene was discovered. So that tells a very compelling story, even though there's no smoking gun, if you will.
Tom, I appreciate, because of obviously, you were in this business, and when someone goes back to a crime scene that happens to be the killer, that's a commonality, that a killer wants to go back and see what's going on. It's like serial killers go back to the scene of the crime. I'm not saying Kohberger was a serial killer, but he went back to the scene, and what you were referring to, he had passed the house on 12 different occasions. He also thought he was smart. He turned his cell phone off en route to the house. And then when he left, he turned it back on. And when he came back at 9 o'clock in the morning, it was turned back on. So he was clearly, people write articles about him as saying what a mastermind. The guy is not a mastermind. Trust me, And when people write these articles, don't get me started. We did a whole show on the guy who wrote an article saying what a genius Kohberger was. And, clearly he was not. And thank God for a lot of this technology, and specifically digital technology. And we're talking about cell phones, cell sites, pinging here, pinging there, cameras, video cameras, recorders, all of these things are circumstantial evidence. But when you pile up, and we repeat this a number of times on this show, when you pile up circumstantial evidence this high, it's very, very powerful evidence. Mike?
Yeah, people didn't realize at the very beginning. They just heard, there was the white Hyundai, and they didn't know how many times it had been caught, because the police didn't release that information. How many times it had been caught in the area prior to and right after the homicides took place, and we saw it on multiple cameras around in the neighborhood, and also one famous photograph that was released to the public that was taken from a gas station / convenience store, which was very blurry, but the trained technician for the FBI was able to deduce that it was probably, he narrowed it down to like within a couple of years, like a 2009, 2014 Hyundai, and he did a great job. So you got to have that, human touch to it, because even though you had the cameras at night. It probably wasn't a very high camera. It's just a basic security camera. It's really, it's not the highest tech in terms of, pixels, but it was good enough to give the police officer, the law enforcement officer, an image where, from his own perspective and his own training, his own experience, he could say that's got to be like a 2015, 2009, whatever it was, Hyundai. And that was fabulous. And so that little bit of technology, it's not the most cutting edge technology because it's an old security camera, but it is a piece of technology that is basic and was absolutely vital to the police because it narrowed the focus of their investigation from a wide range of possible people down to a really small number of people who it could have possibly been. It was fabulous use of some basic technology. Even if it wasn't the most cutting edge, it was fabulous use of technology.
100%. And I wanted to mention, Tom, and this was when you and I in the Stone Age when we were on the job. I've been out 11 years. I don't know how many years you've been out. I retired 17. So you were hitting two rocks together to make a spark. Anyway, one of the things that was even important when we were on a job, and it's even more important, and everyone recognizes this photo, and it's the video that Alec Murdaugh's son took and put on Snapchat, which proved that he was there at the time that they were murdered. So all of these things, and Tom, in the 7-9, I'm sure this happened, perps would be posing with their guns on YouTube and on Facebook and doing YouTube videos on the robbery they just did the night before. So it was imperative, and even more so now, that detectives and police officers, they understand social media and they use social media because the bad guys are using it. So we have to understand how to use it. And, these cases there's some more photos. And Alec Murdaugh, who was probably one of the most famous liars in the history of crime, he's wearing different clothing in different parts. Look at 756, 844. He shows up, crying in a T-shirt. So that also, circumstantially, what happened to the clothes you were wearing when you shot your wife and son? Well, you got rid of it. Technology from his car showed he was doing 80 miles an hour to get home. Technology showed that he tossed his wife's phone into the weeds. So all of these digital technology becomes so huge. And again, we'd be remiss if we didn't mention this stuff because it's so important. And of course we get to you go back to Kohberger, the cell sites, all of the other stuff that puts him on the scene and narrows down the actual murders to about a 7 to 9 minute window when he was in that house. 7 to 9 minutes, he actually committed the murders. If you believe that he is guilty, he's under arrest for that. I always have to mention he's innocent to proven guilty because I get all people pounding me in the chat. Oh, he's innocent. All right, okay, but he's been arrested under probable cause, and we'll see what happens in this. So, Tom, I don't want to keep you here all night. This is fascinating, and all I want you to do is agree to come back. I think you were here about maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago, and it's always fascinating. And you got your finger on the pulse of this technology, and not only do you know about the technology, but you understand the politics behind it, and that is sad, sort of, in a way, because it's going to hurt law enforcement. If it hurts law enforcement, it hurts the community. It hurts the people who are being protected by law enforcement, and that's unfortunate.
Yeah, it is. Each one, whether it be surveillance cameras, LPR, ShotSpotter, because it has speaker microphone capability, so people say it's recording. What I was able to tell a story around license plate readers was that these were small snippets in times, but the rhetoric would be they can track your every movement, and there's nothing further from the truth from that. If the average car of the hundreds, I think there's 425 million cars in the country, right? More than one per person in the country. And of Every one of those, we did data analysis on these. The average car has been seen by an LPR reader about 30 or 40 times. It's probably more now because it's another 5 or 6 years since the last time we did that. So imagine 20 times. I know your entire life. I know where you are 20 times. That's nothing. I cannot derive any information or any insights from that. However, the people who are privacy advocates for these, they're spewing lies or lies of omission. And we actually went in front of community council meetings, and the privacy folks showed up and they straight out lied to them. And then when we always went second, we would tell the truth, and then they would call back, and this was in the state of Maryland, they would call back the ACLU and say, you know, the subject matter expert from the LPR provider said this, is this true? Or, well, I'm not really sure. And they would start backpedaling. And then the politicians in Maryland, and I don't remember who they were or what, but they said, thank you for coming. Thanks for spending the time. You know, we used to support the police departments for these community council meetings to tell the truth and to really show what this technology was and what it was not. And I can tell you, and I'm sure you both believe it, and I'm sure the audience believes it, the people who are trying to crush these technologies are straight out lying. And I believe that, Mike, I think you were talking about it earlier, where, you know, you have some concerns with facial recognition. Every one of these technologies should come with a conversation to the community, draw strict guidelines, policies, make sure you're within the Constitution, make sure you're within the laws, and then put guardrails on the usage so that it's protected, because nobody wants rogue police officers misusing it, and then it throws to baby out with the bathwater for the earlier comments. Nobody wants that. Nobody wants that. We want to do it right. The police departments want to do it the right way. They should just develop those policies and procedures and enforce it strictly within their agencies.
You know, Tom, I'm really glad that they have a guy of your caliber in this field that understands not just what these devices can do, their applications, but how they work and the civil liberties behind them, so that you don't get the ACLUs, you don't get rogue politicians that are just trying to get voted. I mean, AOC, who I mentioned frequently on this show, she immediately went against that DigiDog. What does she even know about that? I mean, I don't think I don't think she understands the law, but yet she's going against something that is going to save lives and protect lives. How afraid are you going to be of DigiDog? I don't know. It just seems a little bit funny, folks. I just got to go to a quick commercial, folks. If you're looking for a great attorney in the New York City metropolitan area, Joe Murray, a retired member of the service, a retired police officer, is your man. Joe's a fantastic defense attorney, and you can reach him on his cell at 718-514-3855. Email him at joe@jmurray-law.com. He also has a website, jmurray-law.com. Joe is a huge supporter of Police Off the Cuff Real Crime Stories. He was once a frequent guest, but this commercial has been so successful, he has too much work. He can't come on the show anymore. I don't know if that's true, but he's one hell of a busy attorney. You know, Mike, I always go around. I don't want to keep Tom here all night. Mike, your final thoughts, and then I'll let Tom have the last words.
I have to reiterate and support what Tom said about protocols and procedures being in place and strictly adhered to. I helped the local police chief up in Connecticut near my college, helped him write the drone procedures and practices, and it was also helped by the Connecticut Police Chiefs Association. And the public might be surprised, but the police chiefs were as worried about civil liberties as an ACLU attorney would be. And the strict guidelines that we helped write and implement were fabulous. And because of that, the citizens in the town understand that the drone is only for absolute emergencies, like lost children, lost elderly person, looking for a fleeing felon, that sort of thing. It's not used on patrol. It's not armed. It's not going to fly around your backyard while you're having a barbecue in the summertime. It's not going to look in your bedroom window. We were able to allay all those fears. So what Tom said is absolutely correct, and that's the way to go, and that's the way to get and to assure the public that this technology is going to be used in a manner that's respectful of people's privacy.
100%. And Tom, before I give you the final words, I just want to again thank you for coming on the show. You're a fantastic guest. We thank you for your service as an NYPD squad commander, and you're continuing God's work doing this this technological work. So Tom, final words.
Well, thank you for the very kind words. It's been an honor tonight because, again, evangelizing the use of good technology and good strict protocols so that the cops can be safer in doing their job and protecting the community. Those two things go together. Like a lot of times, we talk about, we want to make the cops better. We want to make the cops safer, which is all true. But in the furtherance of protecting the community is really what it's all about. So I want to make sure everyone understands that. It's really interesting. I'll just use body-worn cameras as another one. They wanted and demanded body-worn cameras, and then they got them. And then they found out that the cops were doing their job really well 99% of the time. And then they said, well, now we only want it for police monitoring of police behavior, but you can never use it for evidentiary. Like you can't have it both ways. So that's just another example that the dialogue isn't honest. And, and what we want to do, and what I encourage every civilian and every community member is to, before you go jump through hoops and think the police are doing something nefarious and dastardly, open your eyes and listen and find the truth. Be a detective, Bill. Ask questions, get answers, get more questions, get more answers. Right. So I would highly recommend that. It's been an honor. It's funny, you made a comment before that I've been retired 17 years. And it feels like a long time, but I've been liaisoning with technology, been working for technology vendors and liaisoning with cops. I don't feel I ever retired. I just feel I moved up to headquarters, to be honest with you. I've met some of the most amazing men and women in law enforcement in this country, in every state, in all the big cities, a lot of small cities. There's truly, truly wonderful people who are out there sacrificing their lives, sacrificing their personal lives, and really putting it out there. They are my favorite people. I'll be honest with you. They really are committed to the mission. So it's been an honor.
Tom, I feel the same way just in doing this show. We meet some tremendous law enforcement personnel from across the country. And look, when we see some bad police work, we call it out, and a lot of it has to do with lack of training, lack of money, lack of support from their community. And most, large municipalities, their police are very good, even without the support of their communities and their elected officials. So as I said, this is a great profession, and it's unfortunate that there are those who seek to destroy it. And thank God there's people like you that are, giving an assist to law enforcement to keep the politicians and the would-be naysayers honest. So, folks, absolutely, folks, absolutely, folks. Thank you so much for tuning in tonight. I think, I know about a lot of this stuff and I'm still fascinated by it. I think it's law enforcement is going in the right direction, and technology, and, it's going to keep people safe, and it's going to help capture the bad guys that are committing these crimes. So, folks, have a great night, and thanks for tuning in. From Police Off the Cuff, Bill Cannon. God bless everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Mike, Bill, be safe, everybody.
Good night.
One episode just ain't enough.